Welcome to a live special edition of the LetsRun Track Talk podcast. This is Robert Johnson, joined by A staff writer Jonathan Galt. We are in Glasgow, Scotland, day one of the 2024 World Athletics Indoor Championships are in the books. The fastest man in the world at 60 meters is Christian Coleman. He takes down Noah Lyles in a much anticipated matchup. Ryan Crouser has no holes in the CV. This guy has got arguably the greatest CV in triathlon history. He is now a world indoor champion in addition to a world outdoor champion, Olympic champion, world record holder. He finally wins world indoors. We'll talk about that. But this is Let's Run, and we love distance running. And it was a great day for the U.S. 1,500-meter runners. They looked amazing. All four of them are in the final. How many medals can we get? And could we win a gold? Yes or no? U.S. men's 800 meters runners had a good day. U.S. women, not so much. Carson Warholm was here. We talked to Gjert Ingebrigtsen. A lot to get through, John. I can't believe I'm still awake. I think it's – what time is it even here?
It is just after 1 a.m. Local time here in Glasgow. Robert has had a very long day because he flew over from Baltimore via Reykjavik, I think we should keep the number of beers/drinks Robert consumed en route undisclosed because the number might shock you. But we are here. He took his afternoon nap. You can't go anywhere with this guy. It's almost as soon as we get to Glasgow, Robert has blown a fuse in our apartment. So for much of this afternoon, we had no power and no Wi-Fi, and we're wondering, are we even going to be able to put on a show? Are we going to be able to work? We got it all figured out thanks to the Airbnb landlord. So we're here to deliver our hot takes, give our analysis of the meet. It was a lot of fun. Being here for World Indoors, a lot of energy, media. It's good to see all media friends. It's good to see a lot of the other athletes. I had a lot of fun. And, almost everyone, because it's only a 3-day meet, you get to see pretty much all the athletes on day one. The 400, they had 2 rounds. The 800 prelims were today. The 1,500 prelims. You basically just didn't see the women's 60 and the men's and women's 3,000 finalists. But everything else, was kind of happening. You had all 3 rounds of the 60 as well. I think we need to start with the 60 meters. That was the most recent thing. It was the only track final of the day. Coleman defeating Lyles 6.41 to 6.44. Jamaica's Akeem Blake getting the bronze. It was fun. It was fun watching all the rounds. Coleman looked fantastic in the prelims and the semis. I think by the time of the final, he was the slight betting favorite going in on DraftKings. By the time of the final, I would guess if people were betting on it, the line would have shifted more to favor him because he looked so good in the prelims, and he got it done. He ran his best race of the year. Same time he ran in Belgrade in 2022. This time it does get the gold medal, 6.41. He was brilliant. And do you agree, Weldon? I mean, he delivered. He ran his best race of the year when he needed to.
100%. This meet does go by really quick, John. I feel like it was just last night. It was just last night. I'm like, oh my gosh, they have betting odds. Finally, we've been saying, can they at least treat our sport like they treat ping pong and have betting odds on it? And last night, Christian Coleman was dead even, 50% favorite. And I think I wish I'd sort of tracked it. But before the final started, I think he was like minus 125 or something like that, which is just under, I think, 58% to win. I'm like, that's the smart bet. And when the when the Peacock broadcast went off today, even in the first round, Otto Bolden, sprint expert, he's like, Christian Coleman is the favorite for this. I mean, he was the betting favorite, but he's just like from Sprint Aficionados. This is the greatest 60-meter runner ever. He's run 6:34. I mean, he almost has a 0.1 cushion on the rest of these guys at his best. I mean, the 6:34 was at altitude. But he's like, if he gets near his best, he's not going to lose. That's all he had to do is get somewhere near his best. There's the questions, could he do that? He did. It was you shouldn't say it's no contest, but it was no contest. I mean, 0.03 indoors. This thing never looked close. I never thought.
What do you mean it never looked close? Wait, Weldon. Halfway through this race, if you took a still image of this race and a still image of the U.S. Championships in Albuquerque, I bet they look a lot alike. Like we don't have a lot of time for talking during a race, but halfway through, I looked over at Robert. I'm like, Lyles has got this, right? He's still too close to Coleman, and Coleman kept the pedal down, and he didn't let Lyles close that gap, and he ran a little faster than he did in Albuquerque. He ran 6:44 in Albuquerque. He ran 6:41 tonight, and that was the difference. That's the end of the race. Coleman held on better.
I gotta disagree with John Welton. I thought he missed it. I'm sitting next to him, and he's like, I mean, you only have 6 seconds in the middle. He's like, he's not far enough ahead. Whereas when I was watching this, I thought he was ahead. Whereas when I was watching him race at USA's, I knew Lyles had it halfway through. Here, I was like, no, I think Coleman's going to win, and he did win. But who knows? You're sitting at a different angle, one we're not used to, etc. Look, Noah Lyles, thumbs up. Thanks for coming to World Indoors. He's never been before. And thanks for running a good race. And it's okay to lose. And I wish Sidney McLaughlin and Thing Mo and people like that would have the same attitude. Like the fact that Noah Lyles is here and Femke Bol and Carson Warholm makes this a much better track meet. But Coleman is the GOAT on the track. Off the track post race, not exactly a fan of LetsRun.com. Maybe we can talk about that. But one of my takeaways. Well, I don't want to go Debbie Downer on the meet already in day one. So we'll get to that later.
We can.
Well, Robert, I thought it was
save negativity for 15 minutes. We have to be 15 minutes into the race, into the show before we go anything negative. All right, for those of you, if you want this as a podcast, you need a Supporters Club member. We thank you to all of our Supporters Club members. Join today, letsrun.com/subscribe. For people watching live on YouTube, I've now got an overhead shot. I'm not sure how far this was in the race, John. This is, I think, pretty close. Overhead, it looks different.
That's about halfway.
On TV, the angles are all weird, but this overhead, you can kind of tell, like, Coleman's ahead. Actually, Lyles is in third place at this point. Akeem Blake's in second. But, I mean, the margin it's probably only about, 3 feet here or something like that. But it's hard to make up distance in a 60.
I feel like
to these
excuse me, screenshots and video angles in the 60 and the 100, they're kind of like smoke and mirrors. You can justify any opinion if you get it from the right angle. So that's going to be my defense, is like where I was sitting in the stands. I thought Lyles was closer than he was, but yeah, I mean, was he really that much farther back at USA's? I don't know. What I would say, a couple things. I mean, Coleman, I think both of these guys actually ran better than they did in the final at USA's. I know Lyles' time was slower, but USA's in Albuquerque, that's at 4,900 feet of altitude. So I put it into Jonas Marika's sprint conversion. 6:43 at altitude equals 6:46 at sea level. Guess what? Lyles ran 6:44 tonight. So that's tied for a sea level PB. And I think you ran a great race. If you know Lyles, you can't say like, oh man, I ran awful, because to get the win, he would have had to go 6:41 or faster. That's a time only 5 men have ever done. Whereas Coleman, he ran 6:44 at altitude, which is about a 6:47 at sea level. And tonight he was 6:41. Looked much better. Just this was what we've been waiting to see from Coleman all season. His first couple of races hadn't been all that impressive in the 60. I know he won at Millrose, but it wasn't like he was running crazy fast. I know the track's probably a little slower as well, but he absolutely got it done, and he delivered when he had to do it. And that's one of the things that makes him the best ever at this distance. Because I thought it was interesting. After the race, Addo Bolden saying, this is the best we've ever seen. Christian Coleman saying, I feel I'm the best ever at the 60. I think it's basically impossible to argue against them. He's got the 4 fastest times. He's got the world record. He has 2 world indoor titles, and he has a silver from Belgrade, where he missed another world title by 3,000th of a second. So I think his resume is pretty bulletproof in terms of being the GOAT in the 60. But like 2 weeks ago, was anyone saying that? We were all like, oh my God, Lyles just beat Coleman to win the U.S. title. This is a guy who didn't even win the U.S. title this year. He's now the world champion. So it's kind of just crazy how things can shift. And if Lyles runs 300s faster tonight, we're talking about a whole different storyline. But no, I think Coleman I think he's the best I've ever seen in the 60, and probably the best anyone's ever seen.
I mean, this may sound weird, but this is why I'm glad there's betting lines on races. because I think the layperson, even us, we're very distance oriented, could say, "Oh wow, Lyles beat Coleman last time out. He's the favorite." Whereas the bettors knew, like, no, he's not the favorite. Coleman has just such the resume at 60. And this is one thing that was mentioned out on the BBC broadcast. I switched to BBC right before this race. Once I discovered that on Peacock, they're not showing all the races. I knew they would show the 60-meter final on Peacock, but they skipped a couple of 1,500 heats. So if you need a VPN, people, go to letsrun.com/VPN. Then you go in the forums, you can find where to watch like a world feed of these things. I mean, it's sort of unbelievable that they could easily just provide the world feed on Peacock and we could watch everything, but that's a separate issue. But on the BBC, I'm really glad I switched over because Steve Cram said, I've not verified these facts independently, but that at the World Championships in the 100 meters last year, guess who was leading in 6.40 seconds?
Christian Coleman.
He finished 5th place in the world's 100 meters. So my big takeaway from tonight, yes, Christian Coleman's still king of the 60, but the big picture, the big storyline of the indoor season is like, oh my God, look out for Noah Lyles. Like, I had some question marks about him in the 100. The 200 is his baby, still his event. The 100 was sort of off last year. Like, is this guy really, I viewed it as wide open. Now, in my mind, he's definitely the 100-meter favorite for the World Championships.
I think Lyles has to be, yes, because he's just consistently running 6.4s, and he won last year. He's going to be closer to Coleman at 60 meters in Paris than he was in Budapest, based on what we've seen this indoor season. And if that's the case, I just don't think Coleman can hold him off for 60. I don't think Coleman's going to be able to hold him off for the 100. Devil's advocate is last 2 times. Sorry. Coleman has won 7 of the last 9 races against Noah Lyles at all distances, including 3 in the 100 meters last year. He beat him in the Diamond League final. He beat him in Bermuda, and he beat him at USA's. So I do think that Lyles has kind of reached a new level with his 60 this year, and that does make him the deserved 100-meter favorite. But you don't have to go back that far to see, Coleman. He was 3-1 against Lyles last year in the 100. He only lost in Budapest.
Look, that's a good point, John, to point out that, Lyles wasn't even the U.S. champion last year at 100. We can't obviously give him the Olympic title.
Look,
there's a lot of other guys who are like thinking, wow, this thing is going to be mine. It's going to be wide open. But,
a big part of it is staying healthy. Is staying healthy here. But, Daniel Blackman, what does it mean for Coleman's 100-meter chances? My take is it's good that Coleman won. It kind of makes him relevant in the press's mind. But as you guys said, this is the exact same time that he ran 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And he lost to Marcel Jacobs, actually in a great race. They both ran 6:41. So it doesn't change much for him. Lyles has had a better indoor season. But it kind of reminds me of the old adage of Lyles. Is Lyles significantly faster at 60 than he was last year outdoors in the 100? Or is, it's like, I sometimes used to say in track, are your cross-country times catching up to your track times, or your track times catching up to your cross-country times? So everyone's projecting Noah's going to have a monster year in the 100 and the 200. I'm not convinced that it's going to be significantly better than last year. We will wait and see on that. But I think that, this is certainly encouraging that he's in the mix for the 60-meter title. It's hard to fathom him losing at 100 meters.
Well, yeah. Here's something I thought I'd never say. Noah Lyles is one of the best 60-meter runners in the world. Like, even last year, I don't know. Going into World Indoors, he ran 6.4. He ran 6.51 in 2023, which is a very good time, but would not have gotten him a medal. Actually, if you take out Lyles himself, yes, it would have gotten him bronze, but he wouldn't have been close to Coleman running 6.51. Now he's in the low 6.4s. Now you can't argue it. He is one of the best 60-meter runners in the world. So that transformation is really impressive. And, looking outdoors, I had a great point I was about to make, and I lost my train of thought. So, Will, you might need to take the baton here for a second while I regather my thoughts.
Somebody wanted to know what the reaction times were. Coleman, 0.127. Lyles actually 0.159. So Lyles did not. He was 0.17 in the prelims, which is significantly slower. So it looked like, based on the prelims, that Lyles was going to get blown out. But I noticed he had a very slow reaction time. And here, he loses by 0.032 at the start, and he loses by 0.03. So they basically ran. That's actually interesting. They ran the same time if you take away the reaction time.
Yeah. Well, I never know how much to read into the reaction times. But the one other thing I think is worth noting is Noah Lyles. They did some 60-meter specific stuff for these championships, but they haven't been this hasn't been the be all end all. And I'm sure it's not for Coleman either, but Coleman's just naturally better at this sort of stuff. Like Lyles, he was saying after the first round this morning, oh yeah, I've been doing 200 workouts this week. They're still looking at outdoors. He's essentially like, look, we were going to be doing this kind of training anyway at this point of the year, and just so happens, all right, what makes sense? The races keep going well. I'm going to show up and run world indoors. But he hasn't really been backing off on the stuff he needs to do to be great in the 100 and 200 outdoors. And Weldon, they're doing some media summit next week at Lyles' camp, where they've invited media down to watch his workout and do some interviews afterwards. And this is 5 days after he runs the world indoor final. So they haven't really been backing off that much in training, which to me I do think that a breakout is coming this summer with I think he's going to PR at least in the 100. We'll see about the 200, but I expect better things from Lyles this summer.
Well, I think
it is interesting.
200.
I'm going down there to Florida this week. I'm going to be down with Noah Lyles on Wednesday. I didn't really think about it at the time, but it's 3 days. There's no vacation for Noah Lyles, unless you consider Florida a permanent vacation where he lives. But
I think it makes smart to
first
have
my
media down
reaction
because
also
it's going to be an easy week.
Sort of like the
Can you
people
hear me? I don't understand. I'm talking, and you just talk right over me.
Well, he was talking first, actually. Weldon, please continue with your point.
Let's keep it together, guys. I know it's 1 a.m., but please. But my reaction to this race originally is, we all thought Coleman was done, not to return. He's back, almost all the way back. It's Jonathan Turdeman comment that we have up there. But you guys, Robert pointed this out. He ran 6.41 today. He ran 6.41 his first year back from the suspension. So, and it didn't parlay to great success outdoors. He's made the final. He's been there, but he hasn't medaled in 2022 or 2023 outdoors. He's run pretty good. If you look at his progression, 2018 and 2019, the only 2 years he's under 9.8. But he's been the consistent, 9.8 guy since 2017, except for the 2 years off. But 9.76 in 2019, world champion. In 2023, he got down to 9.83. Last year, he went in 9.83, but at the Diamond League final, not at Worlds. And so the question is, I guess, is that it's only 0.05 of a second? But I think you're going to need to be in the 9.7s to win the world title.
Yeah. No, what was encouraging was at the end of last season, he runs those back-to-back 9.83s in Shaman and then in the Diamond League final. And then you're like, oh, Christian Coleman. Suddenly, maybe he just mistimed his peak or whatever. And honestly, going into this meet, I was thinking maybe come indoors, okay, if he's getting back to where he was pre-suspension, we'd be seeing him running the 6.3s again. And obviously that's something only him and Maurice Green have ever done. It's a high bar. But until tonight, I wasn't really sure we'd see it. I don't think this is proof, he's almost back to where he was because, he ran this 2 years ago. But winning the race and running 6.41 is a good sign. I would just pump the brakes on everyone. There are a bunch of people who aren't running indoors. Fred Pelly ran one indoor race. I'm not counting that guy out. Tobogo is doing 300-meter stuff. There are other players that are going to be introduced, and it's tempting to just think about Lyles and Coleman because they're the ones running indoors. But this is indoors. It's a long season. Injuries are going to pop up. A lot can change, but I do think the takeaway coming out of this season, Coleman might be the world champ, but Lyles is the favorite for the 100 in Paris.
Definitely. Let's talk about the third placer here. excuse me. Again, it's been a long.
Akeem Blake of Jamaica.
Yeah, Akeem Blake of Jamaica. He was very happy to have medaled. He didn't make the 100-meter team last year. He was satisfied with that. But Jamaica's got a lot of good young sprinters. And Oblique Seville last year, I thought at Worlds he might win it. He was looking so good, in the first round. He's only 22 years of age. Ran 986 last year. So actually, I'm looking him up. He just ran a 400 on February 10th, so he's getting into over distance work, 47.44. So I would be shocked if, if Blake was ends up beating these guys because he's behind him today. But it would not shock me if a Blake Seville was in the mix this summer. And then obviously you've got Tobogo and stuff like that.
Or this guy, Kashane Thompson. Do you remember this guy? 9.85 in Xiamen lost full, and then he runs 9.87 in the Diamond League final. He's 22 years old. Seville's 22 years old. There is going to be someone 21, 22, 23 who's going to have some sort of big breakout this year, and it's probably going to be enough to get – it might be enough to get them on the podium. It could be enough to win gold if it's 9.7 high. There's going to be someone who's going to drop some fast time in May or June, and then we're going to be like, oh, this guy, But that's still to come.
By the way, I want to give a shout out to 2.5-year-old Cohen. He's listening to the podcast right now live. Thank you, Cohen, for being a live supporter of the show. All right,
2.5-year-old.
Yes.
Okay, a couple more things though. Just Jonathan Turdman guys pushing back a little bit hard. Lyles was not closing on Coleman. Coleman should just feel very good going into the spring. Lyles will be formable in the 100, but it's a mistake now to count out Coleman. I mean, we sort of pointed out he's 0.03 behind at the start, behind or whatever, but I think he was closing. I think he would have closed hard the last, if this was 100. But I guess the argument could be made. What if Noah Lyles has changed something up a little bit? He can start better. Maybe he's better at 60, but his top end speed wouldn't be as good. I do not know enough about the sprint game to say if that's a possibility. But
I told the sprint experts last year when I was reporting that story on what it takes to have a great start and what makes Noah Lyles, like how he's been trying to improve his start. And some of them did think that. They thought, you could train Noah Lyles to be a much better starter, but it would come at the expense of his greatest gift, which is his top end speed. So,
but it's classic. I love the run. The sprinters talk about sprinting the same way the distance runners. I haven't done any speed work. Noah's like, hey guys, I was working on my 200 this week. So, and he did actually talk about his, like, what does this mean? He's like, it means that they're screwed. I've got my top speed is better than theirs. I'm starting better, etc. All right. Can we talk one other thing about the 60? For the second straight World Championships, when we were figuring out who the fastest man in the world, whether it was the 100-meter last year or the 60-meter this year, right after the race is over, people are talking about, well, LetsRun.com. Last year it was because Noah, obviously had heard that I predicted that he would never win an Olympic gold medal. And so, now what do you think about that? So that was fine, knowing Jess, and I think Noah's great. This time, Christian Coleman just does not like LetsRun.com. I'm not really sure if it's because before the whereabouts suspension a number of years ago, we were kind of critical of him before he got suspended. And his dad said that we are hacks for calling him out. If you don't know the story, basically when Christian Coleman got off on a technicality on the whereabouts, I said this guy needs to be on this podcast. I said this guy needs to be drug tested every day for the rest of his career to prove to people that he's clean. Otherwise, people are going to doubt him. And his dad got mad about that and said we were hacks. And then he got his son.
I think he said you're a hack.
And then he got suspended. So I think I kind of won that argument. But fast forward to Milrose, like a week or two. We've interacted with him since then, fine, I think. And then we go to Milrose, and Weldon asked him a question about the whereabouts suspension. He said, I don't want to talk about the past. So he said, okay, what about Noah Lyles? He's like, I don't want to talk. And just walks off. And then the next day when he was doing an interview, he sees Weldon, and he's just like, I'm not going to do an interview if you're here.
No, that's not.
No, he's just
on the next day.
He's refusing to do any interviews if LetsRun.com is president of the interview. So
the same thing happened today after the first round. I told the other journalists, I said, look, I won't ask again. I'll just not interview him in the final. So I avoided it, and they just sent it to us on YouTube. To me, it's just like it's a petty, unprofessional look. Like, what have I done? I think our sport's a little bit different because you don't have the podcast host, like in the NFL level, normally interviewing the athletes. Normally, like that type of journalism is different than the straight journalism. So here we do have a podcast where opinions come out, and I don't understand what I've ever said, or Walden's ever said, or John's ever said that's not warranted about this guy. So not a big deal to me. It seems like a lot of people on the forum are making a big deal about it. Whatever, it is what it is, and let's move on. We've got a lot of other good stuff to talk about.
Well, for me, the question essentially is, well, one, what did he say after the race? I mean, the Coleman thing, hopefully he obviously talks to us. We told his agent at Milrose we'd love to speak to him. It'd be better if you guys would convey what the issue is so we would know if there's something off limits that you don't want us to talk about, we won't talk about. But I want to know, since you guys couldn't talk to him, what did he say after the race? We saw a brief snippet on NBC. And I'm also curious about, you guys have hinted more about Lyles talking about his training, but sort of any more just from being there, what you garnered about them post-race.
Well, we didn't talk to Coleman, so I don't know what he said. We weren't even, again, if we were in the scrum, even if we weren't asking questions, he was not going to speak. So we didn't, all I saw was a post-race interview with Lewis Johnson where he said he feels like he's the best ever in the 60, and I agree with that. As for his extended thoughts, you'd have to go to some other YouTube channel for that.
I don't think he's going to be thinking this is some amazing performance. In his mind, he knows that he's 0.07 of a second slower than he used to be. So I think for him, this is looking to me like another performance. He gets to Worlds and he finishes 5th or 6th, and it's not great for him. And he's got to make the team too, first at the U.S. level.
We'll see. He has to make the team. He's who he's going to have to beat either Fred Curley or Noah Lyles or Trayvon Bromell or, Cravon Charleston, who was the U.S. champion last year. He didn't beat him in the final. We're going to have some college kid is going to break out. I mean, this is the hardest team to make. So I think Christian Coleman will make the team right now, but I don't think any of these guys are lost. Noah Lyles isn't a lot for the U.S. team. Like,
apparently, someone on YouTube is posting on the name of Actual Random has listened to the Coleman interview and said he had some problems in training leading up to it, and also said he thinks he can break the world record in the future. That's the most notable thing, I guess. All right, can we talk about these other races? We don't want to talk Crouser and high jump and pentathlon, do we? The other finals.
No, I mean, the one other thing to say about Lyles is just he's added 10 pounds of muscle this year, and that was the reason behind that. I talked to his coach, Lance Brown, was just to give him more, the more muscle you have, the more force you can impart in the ground at the start, and the better your start's going to be.
Yeah. So John got a nice interview with Coach Brahman, and I had a nice interview with Ryan Crouser, and I do like talking to him because I made a point of like running him, tracking him down, getting a one-on-one with him, and it's like certain people are put on the earth to do certain things. And I'm like, this guy is better at the shot put than anyone in history. And just to hear him talk about it, this is like what it infuriates me when they dumb down the sport on TV. I'm not a shot expert, but when he talks about it, you understand it, and you understand there's a lot in his head, and he's really passionate about it. And I said, what do you think about this? This is the one hole on your resume. You got Olympic gold, World Championship gold, world records, never World Indoor gold. He said, yeah, I wanted to win this one. And he's like, some throwers don't do indoors. He's like, I've always done indoors. I've liked indoors. It's kind of just unfortunate I never won this. So he was thrilled to have won. I said, are you disappointed you didn't get the world record? And it was just 22.82. And he's like, he's throwing 23.50. He's like throwing like 23.51 outdoors. He's like, well, I could have maybe done that, but he seemed happy. Like, obviously he wants to PR. He would have loved to have the world record. But he's like, this is what in his brain. He's like, the things I wanted to be good at and the things that I've been working on were great, which he said was his strength. He's really been working on his strength and that stuff. He's like, the things that I haven't been working on were terrible, which he said was his technique. So, but it's just like the distance runners, they don't want to touch the speed work. The sprinters don't want to do too much speed work. These throwers are getting big, apparently not working too much on technique. So, just a cool interview, on that front. Congrats to him because he is just insanely good.
He's the best to ever do it. He's the go to the shot put. I don't think there's any argument for anyone else. So let's talk about the distance races. I can't believe we're half an hour into this podcast and we haven't touched on an event where an American might be the favorite for the gold medal the men's 1500, as well as the women's 800. Disaster. 0 women in the semifinals in the 800 at World Indoors. I mean, there's plenty to discuss. I think we need to start with the men's 1500 though, because going into this meet, I was pretty excited for it. Cole Hocker is running, Hobbs Kessler's running, 2 of America's bright young pretty things in this event. And Samuel Tefera, 2-time defending champion from Ethiopia, is showing up. Jordy Beamish is in good shape. But, I had a few question marks about some of these people. And, some of the very best guys in the world in this event are not running this event. They're either coming back from injury, Gjert Ingebrigtsen, or they're doing 3K, Josh Kerr and Jared Hughes. But after this evening's 1500 semifinals, I am even more excited for this final because we learned a couple of things. One, Nordas looked fantastic. He hadn't been all that great in his first couple of races, but his last lap was really good. He looked like, okay, this is a guy who might be able to medal, might even be able to win. We also had Isaac Nader. This guy, I've talked to a bunch of people. I don't know if you're even paying attention to his race, Robert, but this guy, Isaac Nader from Portugal, who's a World Championship finalist last year, he's undefeated so far in the 1500 in 2024. I've had 3 different people who are smart track fans come to me unprompted and just say, this guy, watch out, he could do something. So he's another guy who's on my radar. And then who's the other guy I wanted to mention? Oh, Mario Garcia Romo, who has been pretty awful this season, honestly. From Spain. He made the final, and he seemed somewhat optimistic.
Very optimistic.
Yeah.
Really interesting, being here, what do you learn and not at home? Garcia Romo 4th and 6th the last 2 Worlds, was only 10th in Millrose. Lucky to be here. In some ways, he was only 3rd of the Spanish champs. He's like, look, I felt flat. I didn't feel good. But the last couple of weeks, I really feel like I've turned the corner. It sounds just like it's a classic case of he's been training distance and endurance and strength like a 5,000. He's been training more like 15.5. But, Nagus has been doing the 5. He's like, that's not really my thing. I view myself more as an 8:15 guy, but I'm working on my weakness. And it sounds like he's just probably backed up the mileage and maybe tapered down. So he's feeling optimistic. But I was shocked how optimistic he was because he was beaten pretty, handily in this race by Nader. But, he was comfortably 3rd by 0.22 of a second. But I didn't know this Nader guy from Portugal was that good, was that well. So the fact that Garcia's talking so much better, I feel so much better. And he's getting destroyed by Nader by over, almost a full second. Really, I think you're right, John. This Nader guy is someone to be watching out for. But to me, Hocker, I know I'm comparing him from NCAAs and USAs, and he just seems like a winner to me. And I'm like, I think this guy's after he won USA's by more than a second, I was like, I think he's going to win the World Indoor title. And he had the second fastest time today, closed in 26:33 in a 3:39 race, whereas Nordas closed a little bit faster. And Nordas, told us on the LetsRun podcast last year, he's like, look, I'm the slowest 1,500-meter runner that's ever existed. But he closed in 26, a little bit faster, 26:17. But it was a significantly slower race. That's a 3:42 race. So, I think I'd rather have a 26:3 and a 3:39 race than a 26. I mean, you're getting similar. But
well, no, my concern was this guy. He says he's in better shape than last year, but does that just mean he's aerobically really, really fit and doesn't have the wheels?
Well, let's go there, because when we walked into the stadium, John's like, who that is? I was like, what? You didn't see that? And I'm like, no. He's like, that's Gjert Ingebrigtsen. So I think maybe 15 years ago, I might have been scared to talk to him. I'm just like, hey, man, can we talk?
Well, I feel like he was also dressed somewhat inconspicuously. He had black jacket on, black baseball cap kind of pulled down. So it's if you were trying to go incognito, that's how you would dress. He's allowed to be here. He doesn't have a Norwegian credential, but you can just buy a ticket. It's not.
By the way, folks, he's wearing a all black Yankees cap. And I was like, are you a fan? He's like, just wearing it for the heat or something like that. So, but anyways, so we had a nice talk with him, and we had read this article in the Norwegian press about what great shape Nordas was in prior to him running in Spain when he won the 3,000 there last week. And I was kind of surprised, John, but Gjert did not seem to be talking up Nordas to us. I didn't know. Is his speed really good? He's like, well, we'll see. Whereas you hear Nordas sounds really confident. Gjert seemed, I don't want to say less confident, but just was very factual. I thought more honest than most interviews
I mean, Nordas is pretty blunt about stuff as well, and I think he admitted when he spoke after the race that his season opener in Louvain, where he only ran 3:37 and got fifth, did not go that well. And even Madrid, a couple weeks ago, he wins the 3K there. I don't think he was super thrilled, even though he ran better. But he said, we've done some specific speed sessions in between those races to sort of prepare for this meet. And he was pleasantly surprised. He wasn't trying to get ahead of himself. Like, he ran the race and he's like, well, I got to see what I closed in. Like, it's probably going to take faster than that to, get a medal or something heading into the final. But I think he was pleasantly surprised. His speed actually is still pretty good for where it needs to be for this meet. So yeah, he just kind of going in. He was one of the wild cards to be like, is this the Nordas that medaled at Worlds last year, or is this Nordas who's just in a heavy base phase and isn't going to be a factor? And I think it could be the former guy. And when you're adding another, a medalist, he's the highest placing guy from the Worlds final last year that's running this race. That makes the final more interesting.
Yeah, I want to play a clip from the Nordas interview here. So, from the Gjert interview, I said, "Well, what do you think the final is going to be like?" And by the way, we did agree. I said, before we started filming, that we would not ask you about the family situation. So it's just going to be a track and field interview. But he did talk about his sons, because obviously they're prominent players. So if Jakob was here, we know it would be a time trial in the final. And I said, since your son's not here, what are we expecting for the final? And this is how that went down.
And what about the tactics? Normally, if your son was in the race, everyone knows what would happen. It would just be who can run the fastest. But here, it might be a classic 1500.
I normally advise my athletes to be confident enough to run races, to be a front runner. If you can't be a front runner, you can't win anything. So you need to have the confidence to go to the front and to do races from front, and to be strong enough and confident enough to do that. You can't always succeed in being in front, but you have to be confident enough to do it. So I hope that now also will go in that direction, that be confident enough to be a front runner.
Yeah. Okay, well, good luck.
Thank you.
Where in the arena?
And it was kind of interesting. You guys, if you're into the 1500 and the Ingebrigtsens and all, you should watch the interview. There was another point where he said, not everyone's as confident as my sons or me. He's like, my sons were born with confidence, just massively confident. Whereas, I think with
and that race was done before the 1500, right? Before the first round, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So I was going to say, after just watching the 1500, it's very clear to me how this final is going to go. Nordas is going to at some point go take the lead and try to push for home. That's what he did today. And people are saying, there's somebody here in the comments saying, "Oh, no, I saw all the races on Peacock." You actually didn't see this race. This race was not shown. I was watching the broadcast. I thought I was watching the 1500 meter heats, and then I saw people in LetsRun talking about Nordas' heat. I was like, what? Instead, they did a Crouser piece. So we didn't see it. But if you missed this one, Nordas, I'm trying to think when, probably after the 800, just goes to the front and just powers away from everybody. It was just like, okay, I'm fitter than you, and I'm going to show it. It was sort of like Jakob in a Diamond League meet. So to me, he said this, his coach is saying it before the round. His sons were coached like that. Now Nordas is coached like that. I think it's pretty fascinating. I'm curious, guys, also about with the dad. Did you guys say, "Hey, I'm not going to mention the family stuff," or he asked for that, or what was?
I said, well, it was funny because he's like, "Let's go somewhere where it's quiet," and then we went to the corner of the arena, and then they brought in the heaviest machine in the history of ever been seen. Went right by us, so we had to stop the interview. And then I think I just said, "I can't talk." I sort of like I didn't. I think I said, "I can't talk about the family, right?" And he said, "Correct." So I just assumed that's we weren't going to be doing that. So I kind of brought it up preemptively because I feel like I should ask it as a journalist, but I guess I gave an easy out. But
Jakob also has been very open about. He's been very clear he doesn't want to discuss it in interviews, and he doesn't get asked about it. I think both sides have basically, they're in
But it's actually interesting talking to him. You see why they clash. They have the same personality. Like he's very just the mindset is there. He's very like, this is my way. I'm confident and brash. And so is his son. He's definitely shorter than Jakob. You know, Jakob seems.
All right, who cares if he's shorter than Jakob? Let's talk about some of the races here. All right, horrible night for the Brits in the 1500. I mean, Adam Fogg did make the final, but like disaster struck both of their athletes. Adam Fogg, within a few meters of the gun firing in his heat, he just hits the ground. And props to him, he gets up, he races it in. He didn't qualify, but then they advanced him to the final because of that fall. I don't understand. This just needs to be a rule. It's a common sense rule. If someone falls in the first 5 seconds of a 1500 meter race, fire the gun, just call them back, have them restart. I don't who's going to complain about that? So that I'm glad he made it into the final, but it's kind of like this race should have just been restarted because no one's getting a big advantage or disadvantage if they restart the race. And then Callum Ellison was the other Brit, the silver medalist actually at the World Road Running Championships last year in the mile. And it kind of looked like he either popped his Achilles or tore a calf or got, he had some sort of, I don't know if it was spiked from behind. Someone said that someone stepped on him as well. But anyway, he had to pull off because he just basically couldn't move. And it looked incredibly painful. So for those two guys to have a home championship, it's a big deal. And I feel really bad for them that it didn't really work out. The Fogg does get a second shot at it in the final.
Can we just give a shout out to Fogg? This guy, he was a pretty good runner at Drake. He was 11th at the NCAA indoors. Made the prelims outdoors. Was a 356 miler with super shoes, and now he's a 349 guy 2 years later. So he's with the Under Armour group, right?
Under Armour Baltimore, yeah.
Shit, I should go see him. My God, the fact that he's even at a world championship. This is a guy in the hundreds in the U.S. NCAA cross country. The fact that he's here is pretty remarkable. But all right, Walden said not to go negative. Was it me or maybe because I'm tired? To me, the atmosphere of the meet does not seem on the level of the last Worlds from indoors. I had heard this is a super small stadium. It's going to be super hot. Loud, and I don't doubt that's going to be the case tomorrow. You're going to have more of the Scottish stars on the final 2 days, so I'm expecting that. But there were some empty seats for the men's 60, and I admittedly I was getting interviews, and I was in the basement for most of it. But they didn't have the ability to dim the lights. All these stadiums now, you can turn off the lights. These have these old halogen lights, so they couldn't even turn them off. They didn't do the 101 intros. They had the laser show last time, and I just felt like, wow, that makes a big difference, the presentation of some of the stuff. So that was a little bit disappointing to me.
Yeah, I don't think that's an unfair takeaway, honestly, Robert. I was a little underwhelmed because the 60 meters or the 100 meters outdoors, those are kind of the marquee sprint showdowns of the meet. And you want it to feel like a big race. You want to have the smoke going off, or you want to have the lights go out and all these intros and say, this is for the title, the fastest man in the world. And it just didn't feel that way going into this meet. And then you had some empty sand.
And it's a little bit hard because the other heats are you're just having heat. And all of a sudden it's hey, this is one of the marquee matchups. That's why I think you want to do the lights. So right. I do think that stuff makes a huge difference. So anyways, Jonathan saying Hocker's channeling Centro 2016 said it himself.
Well, I think he looked great. Cole Hocker for most of the race, I was like, oh, he kind of looks like he's screwing around a little. He's not he's not being right on there, but I think he was always cognizant. He knew that the top three made it, so he was never out of position to get that.
He gave himself a B tactically. He said USA's was an A+. This is a B, and I think he played it safe on purpose. But
he closed very well the last lap. I guess my question to you, Robert, should he be the favorite going into Sunday's final?
Well, to me, do I think he should be the betting favorite? No. I think the bettors will put somebody else. But
who?
Probably Tefera, just because he's won 2 straight. Or this Portugal guy. I'm going to have to go back and watch this heat. He's really scaring me. But, I guess when has Nordas ever won a big 1500? So I don't think I think he's a good.
Well, when have any of these guys, apart from when's outside of Tefera, when have any of these guys won it? What do you count as a big 1500? Hocker's a U.S. trial
I'd
champion.
be shocked if one of the winners is not Hocker, Tefera, the Portugal guy, or Nordas.
Okay, but that's not your again.
That's
If you're not really making a compelling case against Cole Hocker.
No.
That said,
I thought after he won USA's by more than a second, I'm like, he's going to win this race, and I still think that. So it could be a really cool race. I want to go back to see how much Central won by. Cool story, by the way. Check it out. We're doing again tons of interviews. They're all up on YouTube. But I did talk to Samuel Filstrom. He is from Sweden. 4 years ago, this guy was an orienteer. He's like, I used to run in the woods. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, orienteering. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, not really sure what that is. He's like, and I ran the junior race at the Swedish Junior 1500 4 years ago today, March 1st, 2020. And he ran like 3:57. I assume that was his first time under 4. Here we go.
In the 15?
Yeah.
The 15.
1500.
Okay.
And here some famous coach in Sweden liked him. Obviously knew he wasn't a full-time runner. Here we are 4 years later. He's not even a pro yet. I mean, he's going to school for computer science. And he's the indoor national record holder at 3:35 and going to the world's final. So it's just a cool story. We didn't really mention Hobbs Kessler. Kessler looked fine. You know, I just would be shocked I guess, could I see him somehow maybe kicking for a medal, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think he could kick for medal for sure. The interesting thing, someone was asking in the comments about Kessler and Jordy Beamish, what happened at the end of that race. I talked to Jordy Beamish about that. He was basically saying, yeah, before the race, me and Hobbs kind of talked about a plan, and it didn't really end up working out that way. But then, like in the home straight, Beamish was kind of moving a little bit faster than Kessler, and I think he kind of reached out to. He was kind of asking him to move aside so he could come through, and I was like. That doesn't really happen at World Championships, man. Like, definitely not in the final. He's not going to let you come through. But he was also sticking out his hand, I think, just to sort of say, like, hey, we both made it through together and we're all good. So, yeah.
Beamish, it must be infuriating to coach that guy. Because when was it? It was about like 450 meters to go. Like, Beamish was falling.
There was a gap.
There was like a gap. We're like, oh my God, this is a slow race, and Beamish is getting dropped. And then you're like, oh, wait, he's going to have this massive kick again. And his kick is sick, but it's just crazy that he's getting dropped. So that's a guy that definitely wants it to go slow because then he can just kick people down.
Well, Robert, I talked to him. I was like, so are you going to like try to get close to the front in the final because, you know, it's going to be hard. And he's like, well, it makes sense. Like we had 7 guys in our prelim today, but there's going to be 12 in the final. So yeah, that probably is something I should target.
No, John, there's not going to be 12 in the final. There's going to be 14 guys.
Sorry.
Corchine pointed out here. Talk about how there's going to be 14 guys in the final. Can they even physically fit that many in the track? Well, obviously they can fit 14 on the track, but to me, I think that's going to play a huge role. Nordas is
a huge problem to me.
Yes. I mean, also, are they back to the rule? If you fall down at the Worlds, they just put you in the final? Because they put in the Ethiopian, Biniam Mahari. That guy was going backwards. I don't know. I don't care if somebody tripped him from behind. He wasn't going to make it. I mean, it's just like it's sort of crazy. That guy was falling apart.
I think that they felt bad because they put I've never seen this. They put the Brit in the final before like the races were even over. They should have called the race back. It was a terrible starter's mistake, in my opinion. And then, yeah, the Ethiopian, I think they felt bad, so they got to put him in. But like, I agree with you. You need to have common sense. Like, are they tying up? Were they going to make it on their own? No, he was not. And he's the 17-year-old guy. You know, it's fun to see him run. He looked in over his head. So, and I was just thinking, they're going to put 14 guys in the final. That's too many men to have on a small track. In a final, it's going to be chaotic. You don't want to be in the back. So I don't know how that changes things.
Well, I think it could change things in the following way. Because I was talking to Cole Hocker, and he's like, oh, I want a fast final. I think one of these people is going to say, hey, this is an opportunity. If I just get it, like, I get to the front. And you might not even need to keep it that fast. But if you could just get out front of this whole field, that just is such an advantage. You're not having to dodge around bodies. You're running the shortest distance. You can just control things. So I feel like if you're feeling it particularly bold, this is World Indoors, not the Olympics. Like someone, if you think you could do it, go to the front and just try to go wide to wide. Why not? Like, why wouldn't like Nordas try that?
I wouldn't try to push the pace. I would just try
No,
to take
you
the
don't.
lead
You
and
don't need
slow
to.
it.
You
Yeah.
don't need to push the pace.
It's actually probably better if you slow it because you're not good enough. No one in this field is good enough, I don't think, to time trial away from everybody else. There's no Ingebrigtsen in this field, but I do think somebody, if they get the lead and then just sort of actually slow it down, there's going to be so much shit show going on behind and the fumbling back and forth. It would be pretty wild. So I don't like it. 14 miles. I was joking with one of the journalists. I'm like, yeah, they should run a 2-section final on time and just run time trial. Because but once you put the one guy in, you got to put the other in, and then it's kind of a problem. All right, let's talk women's 1500 coming in. I mean, if they let Ethiopia enter 6, they might have gone 1 through 6. The Ethiopian women are the top 6 times in the world this year, but they have only got 3. They're only allowed to enter 3. And I told John a few days ago, I was like, because when he ranked the U.S. women for medals, I'm like, look, Nikki Hiltz has been looking really good this year. Don't you think they could medal? And you're like, why do you think the Ethiopians are so much better? But I'm like, yeah, but oftentimes they'll be running these fast times, but one of them will just lay a stink bomb. And today we had 2 of them win their heats. But the third one, she was an auto qualifier, but she didn't look amazing to me. So
Ferwani Hailu won her heat. Daribi Welteje, who was the runner-up at Worlds last year outdoors, won her heat. But the third Ethiopian, Burka Hailam, who is the youngest of the 3, she, was in that battle in the 4th heat. We had the Irish woman Sarah Healy fall down, and if it wasn't, there was 4 women battling for 3 spots in that heat, and she was one of them. So, I think, look, hindsight's 2020. I was like, oh, Allie Wilson, or I ranked all the medal chances for the U.S. I was like, Allie Wilson or Addie Wiley, it's the 800, it's a crapshoot. Anything could happen. But the 1500, much shallower, but I did think the 3 Ethiopians were clear. Now, obviously, in retrospect, Nikki Hiltz, I actually do think Nikki looked good in their semifinal today and was very open. She was asked, they were asked by Cathal Dennehy, would you like, what would you think of a fast final? And Nikki was like, I wouldn't want that. But I said, if it takes like 3:59 to get a medal, which is Nikki's PB outdoors, do you think you could do that? They said, yeah, I think that's about the limit. Like might be able to break 4. 3:59 is about my limit right now. But I know if I'm there with a lot to go, I have a good final 200. So that's really the case. I think what it could come down to is Welteje and Ferwani Hailu break clear. They go 1-2. Then there's a mad kick for the bronze. I could absolutely see Nikki Hiltz winning that kick.
Nikki is a great runner and a traditionally tactical to 1500, which we always used to get on the men's side. We used to never get on the women's side. We still never get on the women's side. More oftentimes than not, it's just a time trial. So I think that the contrast to that was Emily Mackay of the New Balance Boston group, former not Rochester, former Binghamton runner, upstate New York. She was thrilled. She was on a qualifier. She looked good. She's like, look, I'm in the shape of my life. I really want to run the American record. And I didn't know what the American record was. What is it? She's like, it's 3:59. I don't know the hundreds. It's 3:59.98. And Mackay's PB is 3:59.99. So she's like, look, I'm in the shape of my life. So that means you PR. If she PR, she will at least tie the American record. So she was not afraid to talk about the time. I didn't put a limit on it, but it sounds like I don't think she would be intimidated by running at 3:58. I think she probably thinks that's doable. So she was happy. She's like, this is the only time I've ever felt at a big meet not tired. Like, she was not a great performer at NCAAs in college, and because probably just struggling to get it. And now she's at the World Championship final, which feels amazing. So that was pretty cool. The British woman, it was interesting. Hiltz and Georgia Bell were like battling it out for the heat win. I didn't really understand why, but one of the guys in the mix zone, the guy from the what's it called, John? The Sunday podcast.
Yep.
The guy that started it all, the guy that started the Kerr and Ingebrigtsen trash talk. Help me out with his first name, John.
Matt Seddon.
He's like, oh, Georgia Bell's got such a cool story. He's like, she'd quit running for like 5 years ago. It was like a year and a half ago. She was running like 19:30 in the park run. And now she is battling that with Nikki Hiltz in the world's first round. So she makes the final. Maya Ramsden of Harvard Cool story. She's here. There's tons of world ranking points, so she's going to get a lot of bonus points for in the final. I'm sure she would love to run 4:06 again in the final, maybe a little bit faster, and then pick up a bunch of bonus points so that she can get herself to the Olympics.
Well, can we talk about what her week's been like, Robert? So Saturday she wins the 3K at Hiltz. Sunday she anchors Harvard to the victory in the DMR. Then she was on my flight
with
to
like,
Glasgow.
with like a 4:26 split.
4:26, correct.
And that's a full mile at Harvard. Harvard is not a 1,600 meter split. That's a yards track. So 4:26 solo split.
Yeah. So she, runs those two events at Hiltz. Then she's on a plane on Tuesday, gets to Glasgow on Wednesday, runs a New Zealand national record in the 1,500, 4:06 today to make the final, and will run the World Championship final on Sunday. And then next week, she's flying back to Boston, and she'll run the NCAA mile prelims on Friday, and then she will have the NCAA mile final and the 3K final on Saturday. So that's a lot of racing. She's going Boston, Glasgow, Boston. Oh, and in case that wasn't enough for you, she submitted her senior thesis at Harvard University this afternoon before the meet.
Well, John said that with the wrong tone of his voice. John said actually like submitting a thesis at Harvard University was actually tough in the year 2024. We know you can go to Wikipedia tonight, cut and paste a couple pages, submit it tomorrow, and probably get hired as either the university president, certainly a DEI job. So we did not ask her. There was no jokes. I wish John had asked her, hey, how much of it was plagiarized, just to see if she would laugh at that or not.
No, I mean, I thought it was crazy because I was like, wait a minute. You flew over here, you hadn't finished this thing? She's like, yeah, it was due today, but, I had some citations I had to do, and it was fine. I went out and got a coffee. I worked on it, and my coach, Alex Gibby, said I had a deadline. I had to finish it by 2, because her race was a little off to 7. She went till about 2:30, and she filed it. She said back in Cambridge, it's supposed to be a celebration day. All the seniors, there's a champagne toast for everyone who submitted the thesis. She said, it would have been nice to be there, but I'd rather be here running this World Indoors.
Thomas Lester on YouTube wants to know, how is it a mile split, not a 1,600? It's a split because the Harvard track is not, one time around the track is not 200 meters. One time around the track is
220 yards.
220 yards. So 8 times around the track is exactly 1 mile. So they start the relay right at the start finish line. So it's just, it's not 4,000 meters. It's whatever that would be, 1,609 times.
So do they don't get a conversion to NCAA?
No, they do have a conversion.
Oh, they do. All right. Well,
so anyways, so that's the women's 1,500.
Well, I feel like we've been shutting you out. Do you have any takes on the men's or women's 15 you want to share?
Well, they didn't show that fourth one on the meet. Well, it is interesting because I was wondering, besides, you don't see a lot of collegians come, but for the world ranking points, it makes so much sense for Maya Ramsden to come. And also, but the way the world ranking points matter is the time makes a big difference. But for her, even if it's a slow race, it'll still be a fast time for her, right? I mean, a slow race is 4 minutes. She's going to get pulled around anyway.
4:06 she ran today. How many college races go 4:06? She can double dip as well. You don't get the bonus points in the ranking for a semi, but you can get the semi performance and the final performance. Those count as 2 separate performances. So that'll really put her on a good way towards Paris.
And the Emily Mackay thing, if she could get the American record, that'd be kind of crazy. She's been outmatched by Nikki this year. I think by Ellie outdoors, she'll be outmatched as too. But somehow she can beat Nikki in this race tomorrow, or it's Sunday, right?
Yeah.
She could be the American record holder. And the other thing you guys were talking about was Nikki sort of battling it out for the win. I guess Nikki's biological sex is female. I swear that is a male-female thing. That happens way more on the women's side of things. Come on in the comments. People agree with me. We do not see men do that as much. Men will back off on a lot. The women go for the win. I want someone to do. Come on. There's all of these academics out there. They do these useless scientific studies. Somehow, how could you prove this? You have to go look at the heats. You have to get video. and chart it. But it's way more common on the women's side of things that this happens. Agree or disagree?
I'm not sure about that. I'm getting tired here. We've been on the show for an hour. I never thought about that, but I've seen men do it before, so I'm not going to go there.
Let's hit the 800s real quick. We haven't discussed this. I mean, it was a total disaster for the American women. Allie Wilson just ran like a total rookie. I mean, this is her first Worlds team. She got out in 4th place. Really didn't show any urgency trying to move up when only the top 2 make it automatically. And by the time she tried to kick, it was too late. It was basically the last lap, and she was out of it. She just kind of admitted, like, yeah, this, I kind of thought we were going a little faster than we were going, and I didn't want to make any brash moves early, which I get. Like, you don't want to totally waste your energy, but the other extreme of that is never making any moves, which is what she did, and she just, had no chance because she left it too late. The other American, Addie Wiley, 20-year-old, making her World's debut as well. I don't think she ran as much as a rookie. That was just, she was in position to make the semifinals, and she got out kicked. She was battling it out with a couple other people in the home straight, and she came up short in that battle. So I don't. And she also mentioned, she's been doing a lot of strength work. Hasn't really been. She called it training through the indoor season, basically. So for her to make the World's team was a good sign. I just think she was there. She gave herself a shot. She just couldn't do it. Her legs couldn't do it. Allie Wilson, I think, is going to be kicking herself because she didn't even put herself in position to get a shot.
But both the men's and women's 800 are missing some heavy hitters. I mean, all the top women aren't here, and a lot of the top men aren't here as well. I mean, Jimmy Riku Scott had the fastest time today. She looked great, and men's side it was the opposite. Both Americans looked great. Isaiah Harris and Bryce Hoppel.
And they've raced a ton indoors throughout their career, so they kind of knew, like, hey, you got to be up near the front. And yeah, Hoppel looked fantastic, and Harris, didn't win his heat, but ran the second fastest time of the day. The other thing, Mariano Garcia, the reigning champion, something of a question mark because he'd had a couple, his slow start to the season. Then he ran 1:45.5, and then today he had the fastest time, 1:45.6, and looked really good. So that was a good sign for him. He's going to be a threat again.
By the way, if you need running shoes, go to betterrunningshoes.com, betterrunningshoes.com. Get your shoe reviews, get good prices, etc. Or, hey, if you don't need shoes today, review your shoe at betterrunningshoes.com. It's like the Yelp for shoe reviews. All right. Can we go to bed soon? I'm getting a little bit tired. Tomorrow, though, it's going to be a great day. I mean, this is a 3-day championship, so we got to get to some finals. And
Bro, look at this stretch. Look, if you're listening to this podcast, you're going to be watching this, but we need to spread the word to all track fans around the world, Robert. This is the lineup we've got starting at 8:50 p.m. on Saturday night. Women's 400 final with Femke Bol. Men's 400 final with Karsten Warholm. Oh, wait, so hold on. I'm reading the wrong section. Sorry. It's the same point, but let me go again. All right. This is the stretch from 8:15 p.m. until 10 p.m.
These
which
are
is
local,
this is
so
local time.
3:15 to 5 o'clock Eastern, U.S. Eastern. 3:15 tomorrow afternoon.
This is as good a stretch as you're going to get the entire indoor season. Women's 3,000 meter final, men's 3,000 meter final, women's 400 final, men's 400 final, men's 60 hurdles final, women's 60 final. Think of the star power that you're getting. Muir and Sagai and Ellie St. Pierre, women's 3K. Then right after that, you've got Neguse versus Barrega versus Josh Kerr in the men's 3K. Then you've got Femke Bol. Then you've got Karsten Warholm. Then you've got Grant Holloway. Then you've got the women's 60. That is just an amazing stretch of track and field. It's going to be a ton of fun. We need to hype that up because it doesn't really get much better than that.
It's going to be fun. Hopefully, I'm recovered. I may sleep in. Let's Run Nation. I've permission to miss the 800 semis and let make John do the interviews.
I was just about to say, I can't believe they have a morning session. I'm sorry for you guys. It's 2 a.m. there. And Robert, John, you got there a couple of days early. I don't think you both guys need to be there for a morning session, but hey, that's up to you.
Do
action
I
today.
even need to get there? I'm looking. You've got 60 prelims. I mean, Grant Holloway is always a threat to break the world record.
Well,
in
it's not
60
till 12
hurdles.
o'clock, so we can sleep in.
Yeah, I feel like if we just show up for the 800 semis at 12:10, we'll be all right.
Yeah, that's
John did make a party
mainly
foul,
it.
folks. I don't know. Do y'all think I'm smarter than normal? I have not had anything to drink because John didn't buy any beer in this town.
What do you mean? You poured a shot. I saw you pour a shot of like whiskey into this Coke.
No, I forgot that I had that. I didn't have the. I don't have it. Someone said, "What's scotch or whiskey?" I bought some in Iceland airport, but it tasted terrible. Well,
Oh wait, Jonathan Toteman's saying any comments about Tokyo? I mean, should we give a 1-minute preview of the Tokyo Marathon that's happening tomorrow?
well, that's why we wanted. I moved the shows till 8 because I think that the marathon will be going on while we're doing the show. So I think when we finish the show tomorrow, we'll be watching the marathon, right?
Yeah,
What time is the start time? Do we have it up?
it's usually 7 o'clock Eastern, right?
So that was part of the thing. We'll be talking about Worlds, a great day at Worlds, and also watching Tokyo. So
I mean, I'm assuming Kipchoge will win on the men's side, but on the women's side, you've got Hassan, who's never lost a marathon. If Hassan wins this, she's halfway through the Triple Crown to the 6 majors. I mean, she could conceivably win all 6 before Kipchoge if she actually goes and chases some of these other ones. I mean, again, she hasn't done New York or Boston, which are the more challenging courses, but that's going to be interesting. But she's going up against Amane Bariso, who ran 2:14 in Valencia in 2022 and won the World Championships for Ethiopia last year. So that's going to be a great showdown on the women's side.
it's going to be fun doing the show because it does start. It starts at 7:10. So right when we come on here tomorrow at 8 o'clock, they'll be about halfway. We'll keep talking. We'll be playing the funeral traps, the end of Kipchoge's career. Kiptum is actually dead, and Kipchoge's career is dead. No, if he doesn't win the race. No, let's think about that. What happens if Kipchoge doesn't?
He won Berlin in September. Like, he's going to be on the Olympic team. And, like, even if he, drops out, I think Kenya would still name him to the Olympic team. Especially with, there's a morbid consideration, but Kiptum's no longer, he was a lock and now he's not on the team anymore. So I think Kipchoge, no matter what he does in Tokyo, they're going to pick him.
You guys can do a live show. I'll be out with the wife tomorrow night. I will not be on the live show. But my takeaway from today, apart from congratulations, Kristen Coleman, you still got it. Noah Lyles, we'll find out a little bit more about you, but you're looking very good for Paris. Was the 1500 indoors positioning really matters when you see at this level, like even from Ali Wilson, there's not much room for mistake, and we're not going to see it tomorrow. In the 3K final, when they start kicking, I guess you'll have some room for error. But in that 1500 on Sunday, 14 guys, that's not the best race for Jordy Beamish. Jordy Beamish, man, especially when Nordas is going to start hammering it, you better be in the first half of that field. Like, positioning is really going to matter in that one. There's only so many guys you can pass even outdoors. I mean, Asbel Kiprop could do it, but he couldn't do it indoors. There's no way. The turns are too tight. The radius is too quick to make up. I'm sorry. So hopefully, do you guys going to the soccer match tomorrow or football, or is that the next day?
Sold out. We tried to get tickets last minute to Rangers versus Motherwell. Robert told me to buy 4 tickets on Thursday, and I went on the website. They're all sold out. So we will. I mean, it does give me free reign to watch Brighton versus Fulham on some bootleg Peacock stream.
I told John to buy the tickets. He said they were sold out. I said buy on StubHub. He said that's illegal here. You're not allowed to have scalpers in Britain. But look, Maya Ramsden's coach, Alex Gibby of Harvard University, has not given up. Look, we know these Harvard guys, are good at breaking rules, not following rules. So hopefully he can get us some tickets.
Join their supporters club or whatever it's called. You can probably get tickets. They probably have like an international ticket thing. It's a 60,000 seat stadium, right, John? And they're selling out versus some random Scottish club. It's crazy.
Yeah, because it's Rangers. They're phenomenally popular. I went to the Celtic game on Wednesday night. They had 57,000 fans. Like, these tickets are hard to get.
To beat someone 7-1, I figured like nobody went to this stuff.
I mean,
all right, what's the number one thing?
But...
Wait, Robert, have you guys ever been to Scotland before? I've been to Scotland. I go way back with Scotland. Hard to believe Jonathan Galt, who lives in the same country, sometimes it's considered the same country, Great Britain, has never been to Scotland. He's there for the first time. Rojo, I think this is your first time. Like, what's the highlight? What's the low light? 30 seconds.
Well,
go.
we had some Iron Brew, which is the national soda of Scotland, and Robert, he said he ranks it above Olipop, but below Dr. Pepper and Coke. So it's somewhere in the middle there. But that every media member gets one. Apparently, this stuff like outsells Coca-Cola. Is very competitive with Coca-Cola. It's like this Scottish soda. It kind of tastes like bubble gum. The other thing, we're in the sort of city center area, which is quite nice. They've got some nice, old buildings around here, which I enjoy. It's close to the River Clyde. I ran along that the other day, which was nice. But the area outside the stadium's a little bit outside the city center. It's kind of bleak, honestly. The area around there, like driving out there, you kind of get a little depressed driving out to the arena. But the arena itself is nice.
This is the highlight. If you're watching live, we were at the stadium. Like, we haven't eaten. What are we going to do? Like, we were going to go to a restaurant. Like, we have to get ready for the show. It only took us 4 hours to write a recap of a 6-hour race, 66-second race. So John correctly said, let's go home and see if they have Uber Eats deliver food. So we ordered McDonald's, and John ordered the same shit that we get in the States. They have a thing called the Big Tasty. It was exceptional. It was about the size of a quarter pounder, but it had like kind of melted cheese. I'm a big fan of the Big Tasty. The French fries, I've never seen it. I've had McDonald's in multiple continents. These French fries
These were awful.
They were thicker than the normal McDonald's French fries. So the McDonald's French fries in the UK are down. But the burger,
well, they were just soggy. They weren't good.
Yeah, they also were thicker. So,
well, McDonald's, they're kind of like the unofficial sponsor of the LetsRun.com live podcast, because I feel like no matter whether we're in Tokyo or Belgrade or Budapest, we do these things really late at night local time. We need some food. What's the one place that's open late at night around the world? It's McDonald's. So it's kind of our go-to at this point.
Thomas, I put your comment up on. Yeah, I won't say it for the supporters club.
All right, yeah. Now I know Rojo. Okay, it's time to put Rojo to bed. So this was a nice day one from Glasgow.
All I'll say is John's been here for several days, and there's no evidence that any woman's been in this place before he got here. So John's been a good little boy.
I mean, yeah. Then Rojo came along and blew the fuse immediately. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We will be back tomorrow night. We'll have coverage of day 2. I mean, day 2 is amazing. Again, I read off all those finals. You need to come back, listen to us break it down, and then we'll be talking Tokyo Marathon as well. So we will see you all Saturday night from Glasgow.
Yeah, day 2 might even be better than day 3. I forgot real day.